Kakadosh Boker Tov. We're continuing with the Hilchot now of Matanot LaEvionim. We know that Matanot LaEvionim, as we already mentioned yesterday, there's a mitzvah to give on the day of Purim. We have two Matanot to two Evionim because it's written plural. Matanot LaEvionim. Right? We said Mishloach Manot was Manot plural, but Ish L'Reu, one person to another person. And here Matanot LaEvionim is 2 for 2. The mitzvah is during the day and not during the nighttime, which means after the Kriyat Megillah, just like the Gemara said in Masechet Megillah, that since the eyes of the Aniyim are looking towards the Megillah, and that's why Matanot LaEvionim was the only mitzvah that was always with the mitzvah of the Megillah. Everything else was not, but Matanot LaEvionim had to do with the Megillah, and therefore, after reading the Megillah, we come and we do the mitzvah of Matanot LaEvionim. Now, it's better, but it's not a chiyuv, but it's better not to even have Seudat Purim until after you're mekayim the mitzvah of Matanot LaEvionim. Obviously, to eat something small or whatever, there's no problem whatsoever. You are going to be a tzedakah chuvah whether you give money or a food, but not in utensils or clothing. So if you're going to give a present as clothing or utensils, you're not tzedakah chuvah. If you give food, you are. Or if you give money, you're going to be tzedakah chuvah. Min adin, it's already enough to give a pruta for every single evyon. But some people say that it has to be the shiur of 3 beitzim of pat, right? Or the shovi of that. And because of that, that's how we have, we have the amount that we put in the bulletin, which is like a seudah. So that's why it's going to be $20, even though every single time it keeps on going up. Even the zechel machzit shekel, by the way, if you pay attention, some places will put $9 because there's differences of opinion of exactly which sha'ar, which means which type of value does it go by? Does it go by the value what you buy in the stock market? Does it go by the value, as we're talking about by zechel machzit shekel, that it's going to be 10 grams of pure silver? So the question is, how is that? So one opinion is it's 7.91, and therefore by doing $8, you're going to be tzedakah chuvah. But even though there's going to be others that actually tell you 8.5, or it keeps on going up. It keeps on going up. So because of that, if you will check, for example, Rabbi Mansour says $9. You will see the different opinions, but for sure it's not the $7 what it used to be 2 or 3 years ago. Obviously, it keeps on coming up, the price. Now, if you're going to give the mitzvah of the mishloach manot matanot levanim b'netina achat, he says, for example, let's say a person is going to give mishloach manot to a poor person. Me'ikar adin, that's also mishloach manot, and also the mitzvah matanot levanim, if you're going to give him enough as both separately, but it's still better to separate the two different mitzvot and to give them separately. Okay, now if a person is going to give a man Matanot LaEvionim and then his wife Matanot LaEvionim, meaning the person's wife Matanot LaEvionim, so therefore, even though they are married, it's still considered two different Evionim, two different poor people, and you are going to be tzedakah chuvah, right, with this. Okay, so that's very, very important. Now, to do with a check, even though many times a check is not considered money, for example, to do with mechirat chametz, you cannot use a check with the goy cannot give you a check to acquire the chametz from you. But to do with matanot evionim, right, we do consider it money, and therefore you could give a check to an ani, and it's going to be considered that they had money. Obviously, money of maaser, you should not use for matanot evionim, because remember that anything which is an obligation for you to do, you cannot use maaser money in order to do it. So therefore, right, especially not on the ikara, the mitzvah of the matanot evionim. If you want to give extra and you want to start giving a whole bunch of extra money, 100%. But for sure, the ikara din of the matanot evionim, which is the minimum basics, you cannot use from the kispe maaser. Giving it anonymously, here it does work. Because if you remember, we said, by the Mishloach Manot, it doesn't help giving anonymously because of the machloket. What is the reason of Mishloach Manot? Was it in order to enhance or to bring more harmony? Or was it they should have Seudat? If it's that they have the Seudat, they have the Seudat now. So anonymously, you would be tzedakah chuvah, you would fulfill your obligation. But since part of the reason is also because, right, one of the reasons is because that we want that there should be more harmony between the brothers. So therefore, what we do is that if you're going to give it anonymously, mishloach manot, you're not tzedakah chuvah. But matanot levyonim, you're going to be tzedakah chuvah, and it's even better because then it's matan baseter. You're giving tzedakah privately, which is actually even going to be better. The mitzvah, we're not going to be medaktekim out Purim, which means that anybody that usually asks you for tzedakah on Purim, you right away you give them something. It doesn't matter who it is, whatever it is, you give them something, right? Again, you don't have to give, obviously if you know who a person is really an evyon, there you could give them much more. But everyone that asks, usually we don't start, doing chakirot or investigating. Anybody that asks us for something, we come and we give them a little bit of something on Purim because we don't start looking into it. Then we have the halachot of the seudah. Very quickly, I'll go through some of the main mitzvot of the Seudat. We know that the Seudat of Purim, just like we mentioned, by all the mitzvot of Purim, other than Kriyat Megillah, that there's a mitzvah to do it at the nighttime, all the mitzvot of Purim happen during the day, which means we already mentioned, Mishloach Manot, if you do it at nighttime, you're not Yotzei Chovah. Right? Matanot LaEvionim, you do it at nighttime, you're not Yotzei Chovah. The same thing, Seudat Purim. If you do Seudat Purim at nighttime, you are not Yotzei Yedei Chovah. A person has to be careful with that. And by the way, that's also one of the reasons to do with the concept of drinking as well. Remember that the drinking is connected to the Seudah. So that if there's no mitzvah of Seudat Purim at nighttime, there's no mitzvah of the drinking at nighttime. The mitzvah is connected to the Seudah. That way people just pay attention to that as well. The bread, Mina din, Seudat Purim does not need bread, but lechatechila, a person should eat bread to be choshesh to poskim that you do need bread. So for again, Mina din, you do not need it. But it's better lechatechila to always have bread in the Seudat of Purim. Wine and meat. So yesh la'adeh b'Seudat Purim to eat basar behema, which means to eat obviously a good meat with a good kashrut. And because some people say it's going to be Yitzhak Chovah if you're going to have chicken or fish. And if you can't eat meat, you should have the 100% the meat and not chicken or fish. Now he says also you should try to get as much as you can for the food in order to be misameach with the Seudah as well. Chachamim come and they say that there's a mitzvah of Avat Hashem. So he brings down like this. Amru Chachamim, this is Rav Ovadia, he says, Chai v'nishuvasu right b'puraya de la yada benurol mon beruch mordechai mikom makom. He comes and he says, En anu metzuvim lishtot kol kach lishtaker. We are not obligated to come and to drink so much and to become drunk. Ulavchit kivodenu, right? Metoch, and to minimize our kavod because of the simcha. Ki lo nitztavenu al simcha ulelut v'shtut, because we are not commanded on a simcha of ulut v'shtut, el al simcha v'tanug. Right, shenagia mitocha la'avat Hashem, that we're going to come to become closer to Hashem Yibarach and to thank Him and to bless Him for all the nisim that had happened. So a person that knows that if he's going to get drunk, he's going to come and he's going to be mezalzel in any mitzvah, or he's not going to say Birkat Hamazon, or even the Arvit, whichever way it was. So therefore he comes and he says, so he has to make sure that he's not going to become drunk. Okay, again, and then he says, that it's permitted on Purim to do whatever they want, right? He says, he says, it's not true. He says, stam making fun and poking fun is actually going to be very negative. And it's actually considered mamash a very big sin. But the only thing that we're permitted on Purim is simcha shel mitzvah and not kalut rosh. If a person comes and he does damages, right, on Purim because he became drunk, and now he comes and he damages his friend's properties, he's obligated to pay everything that he damaged. Because there's no difference between Purim and other days of the year to do with damages. He's also chayav, meaning not because you have a license to come and to start drinking, that all of a sudden you could do whatever you want. You are going to be held accountable for all your actions on Purim. Women are also obligated in Seudat Purim, but they were also part of the miracle. Nevertheless, they don't have to drink wine because for them, it's only a little bit of wine, because for them it's actually a gnai, right? For a woman, it's a disgrace for a woman to drink too much wine. Okay, then he comes and he says, okay, Seudat Purim that comes on a native Shabbat, that was last year, and we spoke about it last year. It says over here, Seudat Purim, a person should do with his friends and with all the family and everyone, because a person should not do it by themselves, because they're not going to be misameach kara'ui, right? They're not going to be misameach properly. It's very proper also to learn, whether it's during the Seudah, before the Seudah, wherever it is that the person should learn on Purim. Remember, there was an inyan even to wake up early on Purim and to learn, right? Because these are one of the most important days of the year, as Yom Purim Kippurim. So we know that it's very, very important. Purim is not just stam of just having fun. It's also becoming closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's why in a lot of places they have the Yeshiva Mordechai Tzaddik and others as well, where they have Avot Banim, where they have other concepts as well, which is the importance of learning during the day of the Purim, because we want to try to maximize our potential in the learning and in the spirituality in order that we actually have a very, very great Purim.